Hey guys, welcome to Shooter Opinions, and in this episode we're going to talk about actions, action design, action manufacturing, and what goes into making the perfect custom bolt action. We're here with Landon Gines of Pure Precision Rifles, and Landon's been building rifles, designing parts for the last 20 years, and we're going to take a few minutes to dig into his brain and let him educate us on what goes into making the perfect parts and help us make better purchasing decisions. So with that said, Landon, thanks for taking a few minutes to talk to us.
Thanks for having
me. And just to get us started, tell us a little bit more about what got you into the industry and what you got to even building rifles.
So I started just doing a little bit of work for friends. I've always been passionate about guns and precision rifles and handguns, and so I started doing some work for friends, and ended up with an opportunity to buy a gun shop. So I bought the gun shop and disassembled the machines and moved them into my basement and reassembled them down there. So as far as I know, those machines are still in that basement. But that's how I kind of got things rolling with the business and started doing things for other people and trying to make some money at it. So
nice. Yeah. So we're talking about actions today.
Yep.
And as a builder, you have the option to see a lot of different actions coming through. There's a lot of people out there making high quality stuff.
Sure.
What are you looking for? Especially you're going to put your name behind a rifle that you're sending off to a client. What are you looking for in that perfect action?
So the main thing I'm looking for is the precision. I want something that's going to have a perfect bolt face. It's going to have the receiver face is perfect. Everything is lined up and within a couple tenths. With the manufacturing of today, a couple tenths is pretty doable, and that's kind of what everybody's come to expect now. So yeah, we want 10 in dimensions that are exact and repeatable.
So you mentioned precise, and you talked about a bunch of different things. What are some of the things that really matter when it comes to the precision? Because I know if you have something that's too precise and too tight, you're running into problems with binding or whatever. There's certain things that get a little grit in there and it's screwed. What are the really important dimensions that you're looking at, and how do they interact?
So for the most part, you want the receiver face to be perfectly perpendicular to the raceway. It's got to be, when they close the bolt, you want the receiver face and the bolt face to be perfectly parallel. So when you close the bolt, the bolt face is perfect. There's no skewampus kind of weird stuff going on in there. It's all straight. You want the action body and the hole that runs through the action body to fit the bolt well enough that it runs smooth and it's precise and locates well, but not so precise that you have to, that any dust or debris makes it so that you can't close the bolt. It's got to have, you kind of have to have that happy medium on where it goes. We've done some things with this that kind of give us the best of both worlds. On this skeleton, we've swamped the center section of it. So as you open the bolt, it's still nice and tight, but as soon as you start pulling it back, it gives us a lot more clearance in there. So it gives us clearance for dust and dirt. Because if you're shooting a match or something like that, there's a lot of dirt and grime and sand and stuff blowing around, and your gear is going to get pretty dirty. So we tried to build the action so that it will tolerate the dirt, but also stay very precise.
It's probably more of a topic as of the last few years. Mm-hmm. Prefits.
Prefits. Yeah.
What makes an action pre-fitable?
So the thing that makes them pre-fitable is the tolerance between the receiver face and the bolt face. So that has to be within plus or minus 1,000th or less. If you can hold that tolerance plus or minus 1,000 or less, then you can basically take a barrel from one rifle and swap it onto another, and it'll shoot without any headspace issues. So the other thing that makes a pre-fit, the other thing that adds to a pre-fit is the timing of the threads. So if the threads on one action aren't the same as the threads on the next, when you engrave the caliber on there, when you go to tighten everything up, the caliber might be underneath the receiver. So it's really important that the threads are also timed all exactly the same, so that when you pre-fit for one and engrave the caliber, it'll go right onto the next one and it'll index the right way, and you won't have any weird positioning for your caliber markings and everything else.
So why don't everybody say that their actions are pre-fitable? Like, shouldn't they all be? Like,
it would be great if they could. The challenge is there's a lot of tolerance stacking in there. So you've got dimensions you've got dimensions all over this thing that all need to tie together. So on a standard action, you might have a plus or minus 1,000 from there down to the bottom, from the receiver face down to the lug abutments. But then you've got, say, plus or minus 1,000, which generally in the industry is pretty tight on a production type thing. It's still pretty tight, but you've got from the receiver face, or from the bolt nose down to the bolt face, and then from the bolt face back to the lug abutments, the rear lug abutments and the bolt. All these tolerances add up, and so in order to hold that plus or minus 1,000, most of the other tolerances have to be within tenths. So it's definitely doable, but you have to be on your game and paying attention. And
got it. So cool. All right, so let's get into the actual action design. I know with anytime you're designing something with a lot of moving parts, there's kind of a give and take. There's a balancing point of all kinds of different features to get certain results. So what are some of those things that you consider when you're building an action?
The main give and take that I think a lot of people might overlook is the bolt throw. It seems like there's a trend over the last few years for a 60 or 70 degree bolt throw over the 90. The 90 has been traditional. That's what everybody's run for a long time. The challenge with a shorter bolt throw is generally a harder bolt lift. You get a faster, easier cycle, but like I said, there's no free lunch. So you've got a heavier bolt lift, and that's just kind of part of it. Some guys will run the 60 degree or the 75 degree, and they'll fight the bolt lift with maybe a lighter bolt firing pin spring, because that'll ease up the bolt lift a little bit, or they'll drop the pinfall a little bit, so you're not quite hitting the primer with as much energy, but it feels better. You know what I mean? So, and that was a shortcut that I really didn't feel like we wanted to take here. I think that we want as much energy on the primer as possible to get that super consistent ignition. So that was a sacrifice that we made. It is a slightly heavier bolt lift because it's a 75 degree bolt throw, but we've still got a ton of energy at the primer, and we get good ignition that way. So
yeah, I remember I was talking to another engineer a little while back, and the difference between a 60 degree and a 90 degree is you're still doing the same amount of work to cock that piece, but you just have a shorter amount of space to do it when you're going with a 60 versus a 90.
Yeah,
I like the extra clearance I have on the optic with a shorter throw.
Yep, I do too.
Even though there is a little bit of extra lift, I'm not too worried about that. But that extra clearance is nice.
Oh yeah, I really like it. I enjoy it. I just faster all the way around. So
there's a couple other terms I've heard. You mentioned pinfall, but handoff, and I'm not super clear on what the handoff is.
So the handoff is something that we spent quite a bit of time on as with this, because the handoff is where the cocking piece leaves the back of the bolt. There's a notch in the back of the bolt that it kind of sits in, keeps everything straight. When you rotate the bolt down, that cocking piece rotates out of that notch and engages the trigger, and that handoff is what controls how smooth the bolt closes. That's one of the things that you'll notice when you play with ours. The bolt almost closes itself. It's super smooth, and that handoff is within thousandths. I mean, we really put a lot of attention in making that handoff as precise as possible.
So we're talking about triggers. Do all trigger manufacturers have the same angles in their? Is that the sear? What would that be?
They all have the same angle, basically. I mean, the Remington 700 base design is all pretty much standard. Every trigger manufacturer has a slightly different position for the trigger, or for the cocking piece. So yeah, there is some variance there.
All right. So next topic would be materials.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't consider materials all that much early on, but as I get more into it, I remember I was going to buy a rifle with a titanium action, and I started asking around, and people were like, oh, you don't want to do titanium because of this or that. And it just got me thinking about materials. So just tell us about materials, what the pros and cons that will go into to different ones that are popular in actions.
Sure. So the most popular is stainless. You know, obviously its corrosion resistance kind of takes that's just the most popular. Chrome moly is another good one. It's strong. It's generally cheaper, and it's tougher. I mean, it's probably better suited than stainless for a receiver body, but it doesn't have the corrosion resistance. Titanium, like you said, is super light, and it's super strong. It makes a great action, but there's no free lunch. Titanium is light, but it's got a much higher coefficient of friction, and so they tend to be less smooth and a little sticky. So you've got to kind of balance that out a little bit. If your priority is ultra lightweight, and you're okay with a less smooth action, then titanium is not a bad option. It's, like I said, it is super light and it's just as strong. So knowing that it's like sticky, whatever else, is that something you can compensate for with different coatings or maybe even different tolerances if you know you're dealing with that? You can open up tolerances and make things a little bit slicker. There's a lot of guys with different coatings and Teflons and that kind of stuff, and they all help. But at the end of the day, there's, like I said, it's just, you just have to come to terms with the fact that it's just going to run a little stickier. And if you're okay with that, then it makes a great action. It's just not quite as smooth. So
right. So
just the way it is.
You as a builder, what are you building your action? What material are you going to do on your personal rifle?
If I'm building an ultra lightweight, I'm going to build it on titanium. Yeah. I really like the titanium. You just have to understand where the drawback is. You have to understand it's just not going to be as smooth, but the weight is amazing. I mean, you can build an ultra lightweight action that's still just as precise as any of the others. So
cool. So let's talk about your latest project, the skeleton. So you're part of the design team with John Hakes and Alex Wheeler, and you got to do a lot of the CAD work on that.
Yep.
Tell us about that action and kind of what are your favorite things you were able to achieve with that action?
So going into this project, we wanted to lighten this up as much as we could without sacrificing any of the structural integrity, So we just kind of trimmed a little bit here and there and did what we could for weight. My favorite part is the timing of the trigger and the action and how it closes. This thing closes absolutely butter smooth. It is amazing. It's the smoothest action I think I've ever felt. So that's the part I'm most proud of because I spent the most time on it, and that's probably my favorite feature.
Cool. So give us just a rundown of that action, because it's brand new and nobody's really seen it. So maybe just go front to back, like the features and just tell us about that action.
So like I said, we took a bunch of weight off of it. So front to back, we put quite a bit of time into the tolerancing and making sure that the threads are ultra precise. The depths and the headspace is ultra repeatable. Like I said, we wanted to make this pre-fitable, so it was really important to make sure all those numbers were hit precisely. The fluting, if you play with this, you'll notice the fluting is a little different. We're actually running 2 different cutters in there. We wanted the depth of the flutes, but if you just run the flutes that deep, it comes up with really sharp edges, and that's just kind of, it chews up the rounds underneath. As you close the bolt, the rounds underneath just get chewed up. So we ran 2 different cutters across there. It takes a little bit more time, quite a bit more time, but I really feel like it's worth it. We get the weight, but we don't chew up the brass underneath it at the same time. The helix is a nice slow helix, so you really don't feel the chattery, clattery kind of stuff that you normally feel on a deep fluted bolt. I talked a little bit earlier about the swamping of the center. So we've got about 2 thousandths clearance out here on the ends where it locates in the receiver, but everything else has much more clearance. So like I said, if you take the action out here, there's quite a bit of play right here. It feels like a lot, but when you close it, I mean, it's like a bank vault. There is no play in there whatsoever. It's just nice and tight and precise. So that's.
What about the extractors on that? I know that's another one, like just extractors. There's like, they said like an M16 style extractor, or
Sure.
There's a few others out there. Like, what are some of the pros and cons of those?
We chose the
extractors?
M16. It's a super solid, super strong system. There's some guys will run a Sako extractor. But what I've seen with those, if you do have an overpressure, if you have a pierced primer, something like that, sometimes it will force that extractor out and it will escape the action. So I've got buddies that still have extractors in their eye because they were shooting left-handed, a right-handed gun left-handed, and they've got an extractor permanently installed now. So it's just something, they work great. There's nothing wrong with them other than, like I said, under the right circumstances, you could have problems with it. With an M16, it's more captivated. It really can't come out of there. And it's just safer and more positive, and you've got a lot more control over it, over the geometry and that kind of thing. So
and the bit of time that I've spent playing with that, has a toolless bolt disassembly, which I thought was really badass.
Right, so our shroud is like I said, toolless, and it also only goes in one way, so it won't go in the wrong way. So it goes in one direction, and it's just super smooth. It's easy to keep, easy to maintain, and easy to keep. If you have a problem in the field, you just pop it out. You don't have to have a special tool and cam this over and do this. It's just pop it out. Super easy and convenient.
The other thing, obviously, when you're looking at it, you're like, wow, this thing's skeletonized. Even the front of the recoil lug is like hollowed out, and with the trigger hanger things all cut out.
Yep.
But the thing that tripped me out is the firing pin is even fluted.
Sure. Yep. I wish I had one here. So that's we fluted that, and a lot of that's a lock time thing.
Yeah.
So the lighter the firing pin is, the faster your lock time is going to be. But yeah, it's just every little bit. When you're doing something like this, I mean, tenths of an ounce it matters. You know, you've got to take where you can without sacrificing anything else. So the firing pin and the shroud. Cool. We've cut quite a bit of the shroud off. It's just take as much weight as we can out of it and still keep it robust.
Yeah. So I noticed the bolt is black. What coating did you guys go with on that?
So it's a DLC coating.
Got it.
So it just kind of slicks everything up, and super hard and super wear resistant. One of the cool things with DLC is you can actually wear the color off of it, but it's still just as hard. So you really don't lose a lot out of it. You can wear the color off, but it's still tough and slick. So
that's awesome. I know, like, I've had Cerakoted bolts, and they just seem to they look worn out super fast. Like the coating just comes off and they seem more sticky.
Sure.
you know?
Yep. Well, it's just a trade-off. It's a little slicker, and there's no buildup with this, or very little buildup compared to a Cerakote. So
got it. Cool. So in closing, what would you tell somebody who's considering like a production rifle versus a custom rifle?
A custom rifle offers a lot of benefits. Back in my old shop, I did a lot of production rifles, and then we tried to turn them in, accurizing, that kind of stuff. Really, at the end of the day, a custom action is definitely the way to go, because you don't have to spend a lot of time chasing down a lot of the problems that you have with a production type rifle. All those features are already done. Everything's all taken care of. And you end up with a rifle that's much more precise and has much better resale. A rifle built on a custom action will sell for 2 or 3 times what a production gun. Doesn't matter how much money you sink into it. It's still, at the end of the day, a production rifle. So it's kind of one of those buy once, cry once kind of things. It really is. If it's within your means to go with a custom, I would definitely do it. Yeah,
that's one thing too. Like, I feel like a custom rifle, you're helping out the little guy.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
This is a lot of times custom rifle builders. It's a small family-run operation, or I just feel like there's more connectivity with the actual owners and their family, and
Sure.
there's more of a culture that you're buying into.
Absolutely.
Than when you're gonna go with just like one of these big box store rifles that you're not even a number.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You know, and when you go custom, there are just unlimited options. You can do whatever you want, you know, and
Yeah.
it really doesn't cost that much more. With a production gun, you've got some aftermarket stuff you can add to it. And not that you can't customize them. You can customize the crap out of a production gun. But when you're done with all that customizing, you've probably come within $100 or $200 worth of a full custom.
Yeah,
you know
isn't
what I
that
mean?
the truth?
So
Yep.
just bite the bullet and get
Yeah,
custom
that's
action.
true. Just do it right off the bat.
It's just worth it. It really is.
Cool.
So
Landon, thanks for your time, and hopefully everybody at home watching this has got some value out of that. And if you're considering any components or full rifle builds, go ahead to pureprecision.com. That's going to be the guys at Pure Precision Rifles. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel, Shooter Opinions, and check us out on social media, and we'll get the conversation going there as well. So until next time, we'll see you at the range.